Etc. Consultants. We're now joined by Jake Trotter, senior college football writer for ESPN. He covered college football, then he went to cover the NFL for a while, and it's great to have Jake back in college athletics. Jake, thank you for your time. Craig Smoke, David Smoke on 365 Sports. How much of an adrenaline rush is this for you? Not that you didn't love what you were doing, but to get back into college athletics and football.
Well, first of all, it's so great to talk to you guys again. It's been a long time. I've been on the air with you down there. It's been a blast so far. I think I loved college football the most, growing up in that part of the country. We know how important college sports is, and it's definitely an adventure being in the NFL, covering the Browns, but kind of feels like I'm back home again. The only snag is, college football has changed quite a bit in the last 5 years. I heard what you guys were talking about just now, the conference naming rights, but every level of the game is just so different, and it's going to take me a little while, I think, to get up to speed, because it's not the same game it was back in 2019.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Jacob, how recognizable or unrecognizable is college sports compared to when you left, but do you feel like, given the business side of the NFL and the things that are negotiated and kind of the way things work, are you almost suited to even better cover college sports as it is in this new era itself, where it's got a lot of things that weren't there before?
Well, 99% of the players in the NFL have an agent, and now it feels like in college football, that percentage is pretty close, at least among the players that really matter across the board. NIL deals. Are part of that too. It feels like we're headed toward an NFL model at some point. Like, I don't know when it's going to happen. I'd be very surprised if we didn't see more seismic changes in the college football landscape. You have the Big Ten, you have the SEC, you've got the Big 12 and the ACC, or whatever the Big 12 ends up being called here in the next few months. But I think that it's going to come down to, can we have some kind of salary cap? Can we have contracts? Otherwise, you're just going to have mass movement all of the time. And I know, you talk to coaches, who are, I think at their wits' end with this. And, it's not really a sustainable model, to be recruiting and then you have to re-recruit. And then it just comes down to what kind of NIL money you can offer. There's plenty of money in the system, but I think that, at some point, I think we could get to a model that is very, very similar to the NFL, where players have agents, they sign contracts to go to school somewhere, they get paid X amount of dollars, everybody knows what that figure is, it's all transparent, and, you have opportunities to, maybe transfer when your contracts are up, something like that. And then you're going to have your AFC and your NFC. I think that's where it seems like it's headed. But, man, we've had a lot of turbulence along the way, and I don't obviously think we're done there.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out scars I have, not from being negative about it, but from all the changes really since right before COVID, when COVID, NIL, transfer portal, now you have this revenue sharing. The athletes, of course, have been able to make up for a lot of time that when many others were not able to earn it. So you, what were your thoughts as you watched the college football conference realignment stories with Texas OU in 21, USC and UCLA in 22, and then, of course, completely all hell broke loose last year?
Well, my issue with the Big 12 back when I was covering, some of those realignment discussions was I felt like the league was not being aggressive enough. And I think that they looked at their situation and felt good about it, and that we're just going to try to hold on. And to me, that was never going to be sustainable, because at some point, what happened was going to potentially happen, where Oklahoma and Texas were going to have, too much opportunity, and that they were, potentially going to eventually leave. Now, I didn't know that they were going to leave together. Like, maybe Texas goes to the Big 10, Oklahoma goes to the Big 12, and the idea of being at 10 and not being aggressive, to me was going to put the the league in peril, its existence in peril. And I think since Oklahoma and Texas left, the Big 12 has done exactly what it's needed to do. And it's been super aggressive in getting the Arizona schools and Colorado and Utah, along with what it had done beforehand, I think really solidified the league. And, the Big 12 is not going to be the SEC. It's not going to be the Big 10. But it's a really interesting league in that, who's going to win the league year to year? Like, you could probably make the case for 9 different teams, and I would listen this season. And I think that makes for a really fun league. Also, too, the Big 12 has, a path to the playoff, and I think that this is going to be the case in all conferences, or at least the 4 major ones. But, we're going to have games that matter in November in a way that they didn't before. Baylor, Kansas State could be a huge game, for example. Oklahoma State, Colorado. These could be big games where in the past, they might be big games for the Big 12 race. They might be big games just because you want to win a certain number of games at those programs, but you had no shot to get to the playoff. And now you've got a shot. And all of a sudden these games matter in a way that they didn't before. Maybe a bye, is on the line. I think that's going to be fun. I think it's going to help de-regionalize college football where, we already know who the 5, 6, 7 teams in the, in contention for the playoffs, but every year we're going to be getting kind of stale. I felt like, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, maybe Oklahoma. It just, there wasn't enough, I think, diversity. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I think if you're a program of a place like Baylor, I think college football is going to be a lot more enjoyable in this new model, at least for as long as this new model lasts.
Jake, you talked about the Big 12 finally being aggressive, and obviously Brett Yormark's a big departure, just personality and things like that, background from Bob Bowlesby. He is not for everybody, Brett Yormark, because some people are more traditional and maybe a little bit stuffy, and maybe a little bit threatened as well just by not really knowing where he's coming from and what his aims are. Don't know how much knowledge you have of him, but you hear us talking about, naming the conference the All-State Big 12 or whatever that might be and making a couple $1 million per team, or even going the private equity route, which I don't I'm not an expert, and I don't expect you to be either, but if you have any light on to shed on that, by all means. But what do you think about just some of these non-traditional moves starting to be made to try and be aggressive and also just keep up with the Joneses, even though you'll never quite catch them, but keep up with them as best you can?
Yeah, not that long ago, recruiting was about facilities, right? And creating the nicest facilities to recruit to. And now it's about, the NIL dollars. You're not going to see the same type of crazy facility renovations that we've seen in the past because, money's not burning a hole in everyone's pocket like it was not that long ago. And, just being back in the game, like you talk to, you talk to coaches, you talk to players, and what matters now is what can you offer in NIL? And you're the Big 12, you're never going to get the distribution numbers in television revenue that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to start to collect with the brands that they have and the eyeballs that are going to be on that conference. And so, you've got to find ways to narrow the gap. And this is one way to help do that. And I mean, I think the name Big 12 is sort of silly anyway at this point. Like, it's not the, you don't have 12 members in the conference. I don't know that the Big 12 has the cachet or it really matters anymore. What matters is having a coherent, cohesive conference that can, produce some winning teams and, put players in the NFL and be able to recruit the kind of talent that allows you to compete in the playoff with the other conferences. And getting more money is going to help you be able to do that. So I think whatever you can do to drum up revenue, if you're the Big 12, is a smart play. Now, you don't want to get too ridiculous about it, but, I think it sort of makes sense. And, whether it was like trying to bring in Gonzaga or Connecticut, and trying to okay, let's find our niche as the top basketball conference. Maybe that's not the right idea, but I like that the league is turning over every stone. And it felt like for a while there, it was not doing that. I mean, I remember 5-6 years ago, I was like, the Big 12 has got to go after these Pac-12 schools. because that's the only place you're going to be able to expand from, and you're going to have to expand at some point in order to keep pace with the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, I didn't see the Pac-12 completely imploding and members joining the Big Ten, but I do think the Big 12 has to be aggressive in order to be relevant, and I think that they've done a pretty good job of that, the last 2-3 years.
There were bowl games forever that did not have sponsorships attached to them, and then they started having whatever it was, the Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, whatever, and people got used to it. You know why? Because people were cashing checks, right, Jake?
Money determines all in sports, and we've got logos on NBA jerseys. We're going to have logos on fields. People are going to get used to all of it. And, if your team is good, I think at the end of the day, and you have fun watching them and going to games, that's what's going to matter. So, yeah, money, I mean, it's sometimes depressing to think about how, money dictates everything, but at the same time, that's just the way it is. And, for a long time, these colleges didn't know what to do with all the money that they had. Certainly weren't paying players at least above the table. And so now, players are getting a cut of money that they are help generating. So I think the system is getting closer to a fairer, a fair plane, but it does feel like it's too chaotic still. And so I think we've got work to do.
Jake, I know you were around, Oklahoma, obviously, with the Oklahoman, and Texas, the Statesman, and just all over the Big 12. But, man, the list of, if you were to put side by side of when you left college football to when you returned to it, the number of things that are the playoff and the
Crazy.
NIL, and, I mean, how long would that list go, I wonder? But what stands out to you the most, or what's maybe of most interest to you that you're looking forward to? And if the answer is just the pure game of football, then I think a lot of people would applaud that as well.
12-team playoff. I'm excited about the 12-team playoff. I hated, when it went from the BCS to the playoff, I was like, okay, I think that's fine, but I don't like how elitist college football can be, and that we sort of already determined who's playing in the playoff before the season even starts. I want you to earn it on the field. And, I know the committee tries to do a good job, but, at some point, if you go 12-0, you should be in the playoff. I don't care if you think the other team is better. What does that even mean? It's the only sport where, we determine championships by almost subjectively. And so now I think we're going to have a more, balanced, objective system where you can play your way in. I don't think anybody's going to be able to say, complain too much about not making the playoff, because, there are different paths to get there. Whereas before, you could be 13-0 Florida State, and that's not good enough. You could be the Big 12 champion, and unless you were Oklahoma or Texas, you're probably going to need a miracle to get in the playoff. I remember was it 2011, the year, RG3 won the Heisman, and Oklahoma State had a great team that year, and they didn't get in. I think we had the LSU-Alabama rematch. But I felt like Oklahoma State, had done everything possible, but, they weren't Oklahoma, so they were not going to get the benefit of the doubt. And I think now, that's going to eliminate some of the, the inherent bias that's in the system that favors the powerhouse blue blood programs.
Jake, we're going to hopefully get you on a lot more. Loved having you on before, and also enjoyed even your coverage when you were covering the NFL. What do you start tackling first? Do you get into all of this outside noise that's really a cloud, and not saying it's a black cloud, or do you start to focus in on actually games, wins, losses, or do you still have a couple of months before you have to worry about that with the season not starting until late August?
Yeah, I'm starting on teams and games and storylines. I mean, we're not that far from the season, and that still matters, right? We get lost in all this stuff off the field. What's Congress doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's still college football, and what the pageantry, the tradition, the rivalries, all of that is what makes college football special, and that's what I'm going to focus on immediately. I'll have to write about the other stuff eventually, but yeah, I'm excited about writing about the storylines heading into the season, and there are a lot of them across the country.
Great stuff, man. Great to hear you again, Jake. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy being back in the great game of college football.
Good to talk to you guys again.
You too.
Take care.
Jake Trotter, ESPN college football writer, covered the Big 12, then moved on to the NFL, Cleveland Browns, and more, and now back in as the senior writer for ESPN.